In Eric Auerbach's classic study, Odysseus's Scar, he notes that the great difference between Homer and the Torah is that Homer constantly describes appearances. The Torah rarely does. Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs argues that when the Bible does emphasize appearances, it does so to show how misleading appearances are. Clothing, if you'll pardon the pun, has a bad rap in the Bible. That was just for you, Steve. Just for you. Clothing is goyish. When Pharaoh makes Joseph second in command, he dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. In a few weeks, when we read the Megillat Esther, when King Ahasuerus wants to honor Mordecai for foiling a plot against him, he tells Haman, thank you, get the robe and the horse and do just as you have suggested for Mordecai the Jew who sits at the gate. Robes and chains are, in Sachs's words, external signs of glory unworthy of a people who judge authority by humility and majesty by obedience. The very first clothing was made by Adam and Eve. They realize they are naked and sew fig leaves together to make coverings for themselves, hiding from God after disobeying the very first command given to human beings. 5 more episodes in Genesis turn on the subject of clothes. Jacob puts on Esau's clothes to deceive his father Isaac. Joseph's brothers dip the coat of many colors in blood to prove to Jacob that Joseph is dead. Tamar removes her widow's garments and dresses as a prostitute to attract Judah. Potiphar's wife uses the robe that Joseph leaves behind to bolster her false claim that he raped her. And Joseph, the clothing given him by Pharaoh, he uses his royal garb to hide his identity from his brothers. Clothes in the Bible are used to deceive. The Hebrew word for clothing, beged or bigadim, also means to deceive or to betray, a boged. All of this raises the question of an entire Torah portion focused on what should be an oxymoron: holy clothing. How can God command ve'asita vigdei kodesh la'aharon achicha lechavod u'tifaret, make holy clothes for Aaron, your brother, for glory and beauty? How can clothing be holy? And how can it be holy for us? I want to suggest an answer from a scenario that was raised recently by Whoopi Goldberg. If the Ku Klux Klan is coming down the street with a Jewish friend, I'm going to run. But if my friend decides not to run, they'll get passed by most times because you can't tell who's Jewish, she said. It's not something that people say, oh, that person is Jewish. Goldberg was wrong about a lot in her comments, and for the record, I accept and appreciate her apology. About the scenario, Goldberg is right, but only partially. What if her friend was dressed as a Hasidic Jew? What if her friend was carrying a rainbow Israeli flag in a gay pride parade? What if her friend was wearing a kippah or a visible Star of David around her neck? When I heard Goldberg's scenario, I thought to myself that if I were walking down that street with Bishop Godby or one of the Black children or teenagers or adults who are part of Bethel, or really any Black person in the world, I don't want to blend in. If they run, I imagine I'd run with them. But if they couldn't, I pray with every fiber of my being that I would have the moral courage to stand with them and say, I'm a Jew, and whatever you do, you better do it to me too. None of us are priests in the ancient temple, but our clothing too can be for glory and beauty. It is not the same thing as having Black skin in America, but clothing can take away from us the choice to blend in, and by doing so, pass as non-Jews. I wear a kippah because I am proud to be a Jew. I don't agree with everything Israel does. I don't practice or have the same theology as ultra-Orthodox Jews. Sometimes people in my Jewish family make me angry and even ashamed. But there is no excuse for anti-Semitism. Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bazeh, all of Israel are responsible for and bound with one another, and I will not curry someone else's favor by allowing them to divide Jews into good Jews and bad Jews. I wear a kippah because I don't want to hide who I am. Wearing a kippah allows me to align in solidarity with those who don't have the privilege of choosing their presentation. Being Jewish for me is not a choice, but neither is having white skin. I don't want the privilege of blending in and avoiding people who don't accept me for who I am as a Jew. By wearing a kippah or a Star of David or some other clothing that says I am Jewish, I can demonstrate solidarity with and contribute to a supermajority against hate with different marginalized segments of society, whether Black or Latino or LGBTQ or Muslim or anyone else who is perceived as different because of their appearance. My friends, Jews are very often the canary in the mine. I want to stand with and defend the dignity of every human being and insist on the rightful place of the Jewish people at that table. Yes, clothing can be deceptive, but this Shabbat we are reminded that clothing is not bad in and of itself. It can be enlisted in the service of the holy by proudly identifying ourselves as God's servants and demanding the respect that we deserve and the glory due to all God's children. Shabbat Shalom.